his first 3 volumes. He felt that he was ready to now take up fully the spiritual master's instructions. And by the grace of Sumati Murarji, he was given a free passage in a cargo ship that took 1 month to get to America. Nowadays it takes 15 hours to go to America. So Srila Prabhupada, he suffered a lot on that trip. Have any of you ever gone on a long boat trip? It's absolute sheer agony. So Prabhupada had 2 heart attacks on that trip. He was completely alone, completely helpless, just taking shelter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is Lord Chaitanya's biography. And whoever was on the ship, he would give classes to them every night as soon as his health improved. Finally, he landed in America. First place was Boston, and then he settled in Pennsylvania, and then finally, Pennsylvania is a very rural place, a lot of farms, no big cities, even the cities are rural. So he decided he wasn't going to accomplish much in Pennsylvania. He decided to go to the Big Apple. Big Apple is New York City. They call it the Big Apple because everybody is trying to get as much juice as they can from that place. So Prabhupada was penniless. He had no friend. He knew no one. He had come to America to teach a culture that was completely antithesis, the complete opposite of what American culture was. American culture is based on cow killing. Everyone's heard of the famous cowboys of America. They were cow killers. They took care of the cattle so that they could slaughter them and eat them. So that was the culture of America at the time. The Dharma was completely different. It was a Christian country. They accepted Lord Jesus Christ as the Son of God. They had no idea who God was. And the Dharma was Mlecha Dharma because practically everyone in America was meat eater. And in order to digest meat, then you have to drink liquor. So most people were addicted to intoxication as well. When Prabhupada arrived there in the 60s, the hippie culture was very popular because after the Second World War, when America won the war, the country became very wealthy. And there was something called a baby boom. So many children were born in the 1950s, and they were all growing up and becoming teenagers, very wealthy teenagers, in the late 60s. But they had no culture, they had no reason for living. So they rejected their parents' dharma, and they started their own culture called the hippie culture, where they just lived freely, they did whatever they want because they were sons and daughters of wealthy people, and those were the hippies. And this is who Prabhupada met when he was in New York. He met the drunkards, he met the hippies, and he met the people who had no interest whatsoever in spiritual life. So who was he going to preach to? He just sat down in a park, under a tree, and he started to chant Hare Krishna. And just by the pure sound vibration of that chanting of Hare Krishna, the people were attracted. And especially the young people, because they were aimless in life. They didn't know what to do with their lives. So they came and they listened to Prabhupada. He opened up his first center, 26 2nd Avenue. If any of you get to go to America, it's still there. They still have the same program that Prabhupada started in 1966. That was where he incorporated ISKCON in America. Bombay is the most important center for ISKCON in India. That's the central office. Actually, all of the temples that you'll visit of ISKCON are just a satellite of our Juhu Bombay temple. One time Prabhupada was sitting in Juhu. He was with he was taking prasadam, and there was no electricity that day, so his cook had come out to fan him while he was taking prasadam. We all know how hot it can get in Bombay. So she was fanning him. Her name was Palika. And Prabhupada asked her, he said, which do you like better, Vrindavan or Bombay? And Palika thought about it for a minute. She said, I like Bombay more, Prabhupada, because I get to serve you more here in Bombay. He said, yes, I also like Bombay more. So we didn't know why Prabhupada liked Bombay so much, because in those days, we didn't know about Prabhupada's previous life. We didn't have the Prabhupada Lilamrita. We only had Prabhupada. And Prabhupada wouldn't talk about himself, he would talk about Krishna. So we didn't know what Prabhupada had done before he became the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So in 1974, Prabhupada came to India in 1970. He returned with 50 disciples after he had established about 15 temples around the world. And he wanted to start the World Sankirtan Party with these 50 disciples. He landed in Bombay. They all landed in Bombay together. They stayed at Akash Ganga building. I think that's on Marina Drive. Right. So Prabhupada, actually in India, he started everything from Bombay. He called Bombay his office. So when we came, my husband and I came to India in 1974 because we were invited to come here in 1970 to start this temple that didn't exist yet in Vrindavan. It hadn't even been built. But the person who was going to construct it, he said, you come and we need help in Vrindavan to establish the temple. It took 4 years for us to disentangle ourselves from the responsibilities we had in America, and then we just came right to Vrindavan. But the temple didn't exist yet. So we went to Mayapur, and there, the morning I arrived, Srila Prabhupada called me to his room. And he said that the devotees want you to collect for Mayapur and Vrindavan temple for the construction. Now, my heart was always in distributing Prabhupada's books, because I was previously a student of Oriental philosophy, and I knew how important it was to give these books to other people, this transcendental knowledge. So I told Srila Prabhupada that if they want me to collect donations, then let me go to Bombay, because there's an excellent devotee there named Giriraj. Now he knows how to collect like no one else in ISKCON. He was such an excellent devotee that he could go to one person and they would give 1 lakh rupees. This is the way we were able to build our temples, by preachers like this. So I asked Prabhupada that if they want me to collect, then let me go to Bombay and I'll learn from Giriraj how to do it. So Prabhupada, he turned to the GBC who were sitting there in the room, and he said, you cannot force. Force does not work. Then he turned back to me, because Prabhupada knew my heart. He knew that I didn't want to collect money. I wanted to distribute his books. So then Prabhupada turned to me and he said to me, he asked me, he said, so what is your idea? And my idea was to distribute Prabhupada's books. So I told Prabhupada, I explained to him that, Prabhupada, wherever I go, as soon as I open one of your books, a whole crowd of people come, because your books are the most beautiful books in the whole world. So I would like to put your books in all the schools and libraries in India. And Prabhupada, when he heard that, he became, just like when we sing the Gora Arti, Chandrakoti, what's the line? Like a million moons. He just lit up. He was so happy to hear the appreciation of all the hard work that he had put into writing these books. So he said at that time, he said, wherever she goes, she must distribute my books. You start this program immediately. Within 1 hour, Srila Prabhupada arranged tickets for us to go directly to Bombay from Mayapur. It was in those days, it was a 3-day trip, 2 nights and 3 days on the Janta Express. That was the only way we traveled in those days. So for 3 days we traveled to Bombay, and Prabhupada sent a letter to Giriraj. He said, I'm sending them to start this book distribution. Because he explained to us there in Mayapur, he said the first shipment of books have just arrived in Bombay. They're in the port, they're on the boat. That means all the books that had been printed in Japan, the Srimad Bhagavatams, Bhagavad Gita, all of Prabhupada's books, were sitting there in the port in Bombay. He had his secretary read the inventory to us of all the books that had just arrived. And then he put up his finger. He said, you go immediately and let us see if you can clear the stock. So we went immediately. He said, I'm coming there in just a few days, and I will teach you how to distribute books in India. So sure enough, within a few days, we went there, we got settled. There was nothing in Juhu at that time. How many of you were alive in 1974? Did you see our Juhu temple in 1974? Anyone else? Our Juhu temple was just a jhompri. It was just a little shack because the municipality had broken down what we were building, our construction. Radha Rasa Bihari, they lived in a shack. It was made out of bamboo and plywood on the sides. Plywood was the walls. The kitchen was bamboo and plywood with plastic over it, tin sheets. And the temple room, the mandap, they had the floor, they hadn't broken the floor. They had the floor, and on top was just the tin sheets. That's all we had. So, and we stayed in little broken down cabins wherever we could on the property. So Prabhupada arrived, and every evening he would call us to his room in Bombay, and he would tell us how to distribute books. He told us, you go to the head of the Sanskrit department of the colleges, and you show them my books, and you get an order from them, and then you take that order and you go to each of the departments and you get orders from them. So we did exactly what Prabhupada told us to do. And every evening, he would tell us which college to go to. He would tell us to go to the University of Bombay, Jai Hind. I don't remember them anymore. But every day, he would, Bharati Vidya Bhavan, it was very popular in those days. He would tell us which train to take and where to get off. And I say, how did Prabhupada know all these? We thought he was just a simple sadhu from Vrindavan. He knows Bombay like the back of his hand. So we couldn't understand it. We couldn't ask Prabhupada. Prabhupada we had so much respect for him. So we just did what he told us to do, and the next day in the evening we would come back, we would show him the orders. Then he would send us out again. He said, now tomorrow you go this place, that place, you meet this person. So one day, while we were doing this with Prabhupada, he told us, he said, you go to Elphinstone College. You've all heard of Elphinstone College? Yes. So we got off at Elphinstone Station. We went to Elphinstone College. It's not that big of a college. It's a city college. And we did what Prabhupada told us to do. We want to meet the head of the Sanskrit department. And the receptionist says, we don't have a Sanskrit department. I said, well then, do you have a library? Can we meet the librarian? She said, yes, you can meet the librarian. She took us to the library. So the librarian, I started to show her the books. And she said to me, well, I'm sorry, but we already have these books in our library. I said, that's impossible. The books just came from the port. It's the first time they've ever been in India. So please, you take these books. Nobody's ever seen these books before. first time translated in English. So she said, no, I'm telling you, we have these books. I'll show them to you. So she took us to the library, big library, and there was a cabinet. She unlocked the cabinet, opened the door, and sitting there in the cabinet were Srila Prabhupada's original Srimad Bhagavatams that he had printed before he went to America. Then I realized that Srila Prabhupada knew all these places because he had personally gone to all these places and distributed his books. This was the greatest realization of my life, that before Prabhupada had any disciples, before he had any beautiful color paintings, beautiful books as we see them now, Prabhupada was doing everything himself. He was writing the books, printing the books, distributing the books, giving the lectures, everything. One-man show, completely, Srila Prabhupada was doing. So when I had that realization there in Bombay, which was the greatest realization of my life, how Srila Prabhupada were just exactly following in his footsteps. Then I said to my husband, I said, okay, let's go. Now, because we had no temples, there was no ISKCON anywhere in India. I said, now I have I'm brave enough. If Prabhupada could do this alone, then let's go all over India now and start distributing the books in all the schools and libraries. So we went back to Prabhupada. We told Prabhupada we're going to start the program now. And he was so happy. The first place we went was to Kurukshetra. Has anyone come into Kurukshetra? Kurukshetra, of course, is where Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita. There's a big university there. And they were having a Sanskrit conference of all the Sanskrit professors in India. We set up a BBT booth, and all the Sanskrit professors, they were so impressed by Prabhupada's books that they took order after order, they all took orders of Prabhupada's books, whatever we had, and they invited us to all of their colleges and universities, which was just perfect. So then we came back to Bombay, and we reported to Prabhupada. From Kurukshetra we went to Jaipur. From Jaipur we went to Ahmedabad, Baroda, Dwarka, everywhere we could. Then we came back and reported to Prabhupada. We wanted to have something to show Prabhupada. We brought him our receipt book, and he went through receipt after receipt after receipt. He was so happy to see that his books were getting into the schools and libraries at last. So then we went to the south. Then we started there, and all through Andhra. We went to Orissa, and then we came up to West Bengal. And we met Prabhupada again in Mayapur and reported to Prabhupada. But by that time, with all that traveling on the second class unreserved, that was all we could afford, and staying in 2 rupee a night dharamshalas, my health was completely broken. So my husband discontinued, and by that time also the Vrindavan temple was ready to open. It was Ram Navami of 1975. So Prabhupada told me that he gave me an instruction. He said, you see that my books are stocked and distributed in Vrindavan. So since 1975, when the temple opened, we've been trying to distribute Prabhupada's books here. And every disciple of Srila Prabhupada, they say 2 pranam mantras. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Then his first disciple, his name was Prabhakar Acharya Das. He was a Sanskrit scholar. He wrote the second one. Namaste Saraswati Deve. It means I offer my obeisances to the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Gauravani Pracharine, who Srila Prabhupada is preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya. Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Sunyavadi. So this is what he's preaching, that we have to remove this Nirvishesh, because the Mayavadis, they believe that the Supreme Lord he's Nirguna, he has no qualities. So that's Nirvishesh. Sunyavadi, they believe that the highest perfection is Sunya, nothing. So this is what Prabhupada and all of the Acharyas in Lord Chaitanya's line have preached against. That the Supreme Lord, he has qualities, and from him expands the Brahmajyoti. So Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. That means in the Western countries. So we're here preaching in India, and Prabhupada, he was assigned to preach in the Western countries. So it always made me unhappy that, yes, Prabhupada wanted us to come here and set an example that we as American disciples, we've given up all of the luxuries, all of the life in America. We've come here to live simply and accept Vedic culture. But I'm not helping Prabhupada to preach in the Western countries. So I decided that what we need is, by that time, Prabhupada's books have been translated into 87 languages. It was amazing. His disciples from every country, every culture, they were translating Prabhupada's books. So we had 87 languages. And I decided that we should have all of those languages here in Vrindavan, so that when all the preaching that's being done all over the world, just like yourselves, what they want to do is, the people want to come and visit Vrindavan. So the first thing we did was, if you go into Prabhupada's house, we set up an international library of Prabhupada's books. Did you see that? Yes. So that was done in 1984 as a Vyasa Puja offering to Srila Prabhupada. All of the devotees who came for the Gaur Purnima festival, just like this time, we made announcements, they gave donations, and we got the books from as many countries as we could to set up that library. But by this time, in the 2000s, so many, nowadays, the foreigners are coming by the busloads to Vrindavan. They're coming from Poland, from Korea, from Ukraine, from Greece and Turkey. These are completely Yavana Mlecha countries. From Russia, we have about 200 Russians a day coming. It's just amazing what's happened over the last 50 years of preaching. So now we've set up shops full of foreign languages. And the people come, and when they see a book in their language, it just endears them so much. They immediately take it. Like, oh, they've taken the trouble to print this book in my language. So they take that book, and these books are like little time bombs. They take that book back to their country, and that book is there, and so many people will read it. Oh, you went to India. What did you bring back? I brought this book back. So then they have the book, and who knows how many people will read that book and be affected. So in that way, Vrindavan being the hub of the spiritual universe, the center, they come here, they take Prabhupada's books, and the books get distributed all over the world that way. So Prabhuji, Vital Rukmini Prabhuji, he asked me to speak about my realizations. Yes. So each disciple, each person, they have, because we're very minute, we can only do so much in one lifetime. None of us are as great as what Prabhupada did. He was able to establish deity worship, teach us how to cook, teach us how to, everything he taught us. We didn't know left from right before we met Srila Prabhupada. So, but he trained each of his disciples in particular ways. Some he encouraged in doing drama. Some he encouraged as artists. Some he encouraged to open up incense businesses. Some he encouraged to do construction. So, as one minute little speck of dust at Prabhupada's lotus feet, the way Prabhupada instructed me and trained me and molded me was to distribute his books. And that way, the spiritual master is so merciful. Ramanda Brahmite Kone Bhagavan Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. So we've been wandering in so many different species of life. There are 8,400,000 species of life. When we left Krishna and didn't want to serve him anymore in the spiritual world, so he very kindly, he sent us here to enjoy independent of him, so we could forget all about him. And we've been trying our best to enjoy in so many different bodies, lifetimes, millions and millions of births we've taken. Finally, through the process of evolution, we've come to the human form. In the human form of life, because all living entities are doing the same thing. They're eating, they're sleeping, they're mating, and they're defending. Animals, bugs, birds, humans, demigods, they're all doing those four things. But in the human species, we can add Dharma to our life. There's Dharma, how does it go? Artha, Kama, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. When we add Dharma to our life, Bhagavat Dharma, that means when we try to worship the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. There's so many different dharmas. There's Deha Dharma, there's Sanskriti Dharma, so many, there's Desh Dharma, so many dharmas. But when we add Bhagavat Dharma to our life, by executing Dharma, we get art, right? Art means we get some labh, right? And from that labh, then we can enjoy. That's Kama. And then, after trying to enjoy, with money, with so many different ways that we can enjoy, everyone experiences frustration. If you admit to yourself honestly, our life is full of frustration. We're trying so hard to enjoy with family, with friends, with society, but there's always some sand in the sweet rice. It's never perfect. So, at that time, when we've done the Dharma, Artha, Kama, then we seek moksha. So those are the Purush Artha, the four things that the human beings are aspiring for. But after moksha, then there's Krishna Bhakti. So even when we have moksha, we're still not happy because we don't have anything to do. But when we engage in Krishna Bhakti, then we're back to our original situation, loving Krishna. So that's why Vrindavan is here. That's why all the temples have been established, so that we can learn this process of Bhagavat Dharma and eventually come to the platform of Krishna Bhakti. In Krishna Bhakti also there are many, many different levels. There's Sakam Karma Yoga, then there's Nishkam Karma Yoga. That means we're doing our karma to get some result, but we're offering some of that result to Krishna, giving some donation or something like that. Then eventually we give up all of that, any desire to enjoy the fruits of our work. We do our karma just for Krishna. Then there's Jnana Yoga. Then there's Astanga Yoga. There's so many different forms of yoga. Yoga means to link with Krishna. Finally, we come to the stage of Bhakti Yoga. And Srila Prabhupada's books, he teaches us the process of Bhakti Yoga. How many of you have read the Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is the instruction book, How to Love Krishna. All the different stages, all the different activities, all the different prohibitions that will keep you from developing and progressing in your love for Krishna. So if you can get a hold of that book, Nectar of Devotion, if you read this book, Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada says you can turn anywhere. If you don't like to start at the beginning because it's too technical, you just open up the book. He said it's like candy. Anywhere you lick, it's sweet. So this Nectar of Devotion, it's like nectar. You turn anywhere and you'll read about the different rasas with Krishna. There are 5 different rasas, and depending upon your relationship with Krishna that you originally had, you'll be attracted to a particular rasa. Maybe you were Krishna's flower garland, maybe you were Krishna's lover, maybe you were Krishna's sweeper, whatever that is, you'll be attracted in a particular way. And as you advance in the process of bhakti yoga, you'll come closer and closer to again returning to your eternal loving relationship with Krishna. So this process, it's not that we can expect perfection in one lifetime, but whatever we can do in this lifetime, try for perfection. See if you can finally go back to Krishna. That's why the magazine is called Back to Godhead, so that we can go back to Krishna. Not directly, you don't go back immediately to the spiritual world. You first go to the place where Krishna is having his pastimes, and you learn from the Nitya Siddha Bhaktas, the devotees who have come from the spiritual world with Krishna. You learn from them how to perfect your devotional service. It's a beautiful process. Now that you're in Vrindavan, you can take advantage by hearing about Krishna's pastimes, seeing the places, diving into just immersing yourself in Krishna Leela and Krishna Bhavana, and aspiring for that level that you don't have any more of these sadhiric, dharmic responsibilities, and you can just dedicate your whole life to loving Krishna under the guidance of a spiritual master. So are there any questions? So we're all ready to go back to Godhead then. Very nice. How many days are you going to be here?
Sunday evening.
Sunday you go back. Okay. So when you go back to Juhu, remember, Juhu is a great holy dham. It's a wonderful place. And Prabhupada loved Juhu Beach so much, it was his last desire. When he came back to leave his body, when he was in London, he came back he didn't go right to Vrindavan. No, he went to Juhu. He said, I don't want to die until Radharasa Bihari have their temple. He took you'll see in Prabhupada's house, there's a picture of Radharasa Bihari right next to Prabhupada. He carried that picture everywhere he went because he promised Radharasa Bihari that he would build that temple for them.